2, 1.
Live from the Rob Christensen Radio Network Satellite Studio, it's Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies, the live video podcast for movie lovers who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. Tonight, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Oscar-nominated Judas and the Black Messiah. It is and let me dig up the log line here, as Black Panther Party activist Fred Hampton ascends, falling for a fellow revolutionary en route. Oh my goodness, my mouth. Bill O'Neill infiltrates the party at the direction of the FBI. Over time, a battle wages for O'Neill's soul. Anyway, before we get into the meat of the show and the ideological ingredients, etc., I did want to take this opportunity. First of all, hey, if you like this kind of content, don't be afraid to hit that like button. And also to recommend to you, and there's a link, very first line of the description below, and that's up right now as we speak. We're promoting, of course, we're in 2 weeks this time, we're going to be doing our live Oscars watch party with a couple of friends, including Cody Brockup from the Brockup side, Sean Jackson from Lost in the Reel, and we've got a contest going on. Your best Oscar predictions. Blah. Your best Oscar predictions. There's a great Google form link in the description. Love to get as many people as possible to participate. There may be prizes. Rest assured, there'll be a ton of respect amongst the community and very little, if any, cash value. All right. With that out of the way, let's get back to it. Yes. So yeah, where was I? Judas and the Black Messiah. This film was directed by Shaka King and written by Shaka King and Will Burson. Stars Daniel Kaluuya and Kaluuya, my apologies, Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield. And it has a huge supporting cast. Jesse Plemons, Dominique Fishback, Ashton Sanders, Daryl Britt Gibson, Lil Ray Howery, L.G. Smith, Dominique Thorne, and a really kind of bizarre performance as J. Edgar Hoover by Martin Sheen. Anyway, we will... What else is there to say? Yes, the ideological ingredients. On the story side, does this film, does it pass the Bechdel test? No, it does not. Does it have class analysis and class consciousness? Yes, I say it would, and almost a teasing amount of analysis, which I really would love to have seen more. But yeah, it definitely earns a check mark there on both ends. On the production side, I'd say definitely it's a union-made picture. And would it earn a reframe stamp? I don't believe so. That said, actually, never mind. I don't believe so. I have a high degree of confidence it would not. It doesn't meet the minimum bar. So no reframe stamp, but it is a union-made production. Anyway, I think with that out of mind, it is time to invite my co-chair for the Jim Rob Overanalyze Movies Party, Mr. Jim Chilboyko. Hello there. Hello, sir. How you doing, man?
Free Huey. I don't know. Has he been freed yet? It's been like 50 years, but...
Hot take!
Oh, there we go. Conspicuously absent from last week's show, but I just thought afterwards, hey, we didn't have any hot takes after another round. So yeah. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm enjoying this. We can feel spring on us. doesn't mean that winter is.
Nope.
It's Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. We're not counting it out. We're not counting winter out just yet. But it does, we know we are in spring. We know the great weather is coming soon. So I'm quite excited about that. I'm also excited, Jim, I don't know about you, but I'm excited at the fact that you and I are going to qualify for inoculation soonish, like maybe sometime in May. We'll actually be able to get a first shot, and that bodes well for a summer. Real human contact. So I'm excited about that. How about yourself? How are you doing, man?
Good.
You're birding hard.
Yeah. Well, I have so many hours. I sort of my last official work hour was 11 o'clock Friday night. So I was down in the basement of the legislature by myself and shut out all the lights and things. So when I get a chance to not be sedentary, take a break from screen time, I have found a good solution is to get out into the parks and just sort of do some minor hiking and things like that. So just it gets me out of the house, away from the computer, and just moving too. So that's another big issue. Just the chair. What is sitting is what used to be smoking. It's the sitting is the new smoking, I guess. But yeah. So trying to avoid that.
Solid hot take.
Yeah. Oh.
I can't even call it a hot take though. That's just solid. That's a solid take.
But now we're just waiting for the winter storm to roll in, which I don't think we're alone. I think Alberta's storm was trending last night, and who knows? I think some of the states is even getting some intemperate weather soon. So it's not looking well. It's looking cozy, I guess, if you don't want to go outside. So that's a good excuse for that. So yeah.
I hear you. All right. Well, with that out of the way, you know what? It doesn't look like we have anyone in the chat yet. Which is perfectly fine. That shouldn't stop us from moving forward. So, Jim, why don't you get us started with your first thoughts on this flick?
Sure. So let me just call this up quickly. I wrote down a few quick thoughts here. Okay, the first one is, who the hell am I going to choose in my Oscar pool? I thought that both the leads, Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, although their roles were remarkably different and had different purposes, they were both great at what they did. I think it makes it the most interesting category already. Kaluuya's Hampton had that larger than life. Even seemed physically bigger than I've seen him before. He had that larger than life physical presence. And Stanfield, his William O'Neill was sort of like a Chicago version of Gollum a little bit, where he's sort of happy to your face and then conniving behind the back. And
guilt-ridden, that kind of...
Yeah, that just sort of tortured...
You're tricksing them,
Yeah. But the four top leads, and we've talked about this before, where Kevin Kline is the lead of Biko. It's nice to see a movie about the African American experience where 7 of the top 8 names are not white. In this case, the top four billed performers are black. One's English, of course, and Jesse Plemons in there as Roy Mitchell, their Stanfield's or O'Neill's FBI contact.
Yeah.
And another, the other thing is the big name is Martin Sheen as. At first, I thought it was Giuliani with that, or the Penguin from the old Tim Burton Batmans, but it turned out that it was J. Edgar Hoover. Anyway, so that's I thought, for this one, the performance
that qualifies for a hot take.
Yay! The performances. Sometimes it's not always the performances that are key. There's a lot of other things going on. I think for this one, the performances were key. Stanfield was he's got a good name currently, and I think this is probably just, a lot of people just love the heck out of that guy. But yeah, no, I was very impressed. We'd been talking about it for about 6 months, and it was good to see.
Yeah. For myself, Jim, I struggle with this one a little bit. There was a part of me that, as much as I was enjoying the film, and I agree with you, not a weak performance in the bunch, and Kaluuya, like Fred Hampton was so young, 21, but you look at the speeches, what little footage we have of Hampton, and you're right, Kaluuya really kind of captured him. And you look at the tortured visage of O'Neill in that PBS interview a couple decades later, and I think Lakeith, Mr. Stanfield, really kind of caught that sort of weird kind of, I'm in the struggle, but it's like, yeah, you're also an FBI Fink. What side of the struggle were you on, buddy? I wish, and this is, there's a part of me thinking, boy, what could this film have been if it was like, you know what, we're going to focus on Lakeith Stanfield's character, the O'Neill character. It is truly going to be about him. Mm-hmm. If we meet Kaluuya, we're going to meet him like Stephen Biko in the Biko movie. Sort of there, but kind of off in the distance. Like, O'Neill kept thinking for the FBI for a couple of years after.
Oh yeah.
After Hampton's murder, so really could have been a really interesting character study of what makes for someone who's in that scenario and does what he did, or do it all about Fred Hampton. I'd love to have known like a deeper dive into what he did in that community, how he was able to build those bridges, because those were real bridges he made with the Chicano community, which was another movement, with the white trash. That was an actual alliance he built. He was the first one to do a rainbow coalition in a very fraught and tense time. I would have loved to have known more, and so that's. There's a part of me kind of going, that's a pretty good movie. What could have been? At the same time, not the same problems that was with the other movie set in this immediate time, the trial of Chicago 7. So it's, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's that. It has those problems. That would be my first take. Jumping along here, quick one-word answer. Worth your time?
Yes.
Ditto.
Yeah.
All right. Moving along.
Next, what? Good night, folks.
Oh,
our job here is done.
Let's take a quick. We do have somebody watching. We have an audience, Jim. Oh my goodness, Richard L. Hey folks, Richard and Katie signing in. Well, woo! And I think this also means happy birthday from Hot Take Harry.
I see.
Happy birthday, Katie.
Katie is 6, apparently. I'm just kidding.
Happy birthday!
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. That's awesome. And did he have a name last week or last time? He now has
Take Harry? Yeah, no, I've just come up with that in the
I think that week. Just came up in the green room chats or what have you. But
I decided as I was getting more into promoting our show, I was like, Hot Take Harry should be, and then it's like, well, I guess that's who he is, Hot Take Harry. Anyway, Richard and Katie, welcome to the show. All right, Jim. First of all, let's make sure everyone's aware. We're in the spoiler zone now, everybody.
We are.
Okay. Why don't let's start with the sound of the picture. What did you think?
Sure. There was a couple of things going on. I watched this later at night last night, and I have, and this is a technical thing, and it might have been my settings or something, but it's one of those movies where the music was very loud and the conversations were very quiet. So I kept on having to, like, the dynamics were sort of all over the place, and I really had to jack it when the volume when they were talking. And this is on my TV, and I haven't really noticed those kinds of issues before. Anyway, having said that, I found I quite like what they did with just with the score and the soundtrack. This was more of a scored movie than we've been used to lately, I think. And they alternated between sort of the whimsical, kind of snappy, jazzy kind of thing. Like when the title cards came up, it was like Judas and the Black Messiah, and they had this kind of funky track, laid over that, and it was kind of fun. Like there was a fun element to some of the sound, and then there was times when they actually used it to denote that something ominous was happening. Like when they walked into the Crown's clubhouse, they had some sort of more serious, like, okay, no more funny guy kind of music, and so. I thought they handled that well. Still, there wasn't music every second. I mean, it didn't hit you over the head, I don't think. But yeah. So those are the two things that I wanted to bring up. Just that sort of that ability to shift tonally. The music, it wasn't just the same thing the whole movie,
without it being jarring.
Yeah, and just that sort of the dynamics being a little bit weird for what I'm used to. But yeah, how about you?
I agree with you, Jim. I did not catch as much of that volume swing, like that, the music being really loud and where the dialogue was weak. I didn't catch that as much. That said, it's interesting. I've been noticing that in a lot of other work lately, where I'm like,
what? For what?
Well, you are like you're cranking up the volume and then you got to drop it back down. Be interesting if Richard and Katie could chime in on that, if they found the same thing as you did. I would say, if I could say anything, and it could have been just the digital version I was watching, I just found it quiet all around. Usually movies aren't done to the same loudness level as a YouTube video, as an example, or even broadcast television, because that allows for higher dynamic range, right? So if you've got a lower loudness level, when you want to peak, you can really peak. That said, Jim, other people may have had that same experience, so it'd be interesting. We'll keep an eye on the chat for that.
Sure, yeah.
Otherwise, I thought, perfectly serviceable sound. The music wasn't abused. It wasn't obvious genre or obvious of the era music, where all of a sudden sometimes the song choice kind of muscles its way in and you're feeling Forgotten Son. We're talking about Vietnam. Like there's certain music, period music cues that have been they've become overused cliches themselves.
Yeah. And
I never felt that once in this. So
yeah.
I think we got a lot of overlap there.
Yeah. I mean, they were made to, their temporary song made to sound like a period piece. The song over the closing credits was by Her, or Her, and I think that's nominated for Best Song, perhaps. But I totally forgot to check. I had it written down even. Yeah, that had horns, and it was sort of a kind of a funkier number, but it had horns and things like that. So like period had a bit of a period sound. So, but yeah.
Quick jump into the chat first before we move on to the look of it all, Jim. First of all, Apparently, Katie is a fan of the Hot Take Harry happy birthday wishes from Hot Take Harry. Well, Katie will pass on your thanks to Harry for that. Richard apparently appreciated it as well. Now here's what's important. Oh my goodness, sad to say, we didn't get to see the movie. We'll defensively cover our ears when obvious spoilers come up. You know what? I don't think it's that kind of movie. Richard, you and Katie are familiar with, modern history. Fred Hampton does not make it. But the bottom line is they can't comment on the music/dialogue sound, that disparity. So we'll just have to leave that for others to comment on later, Jim. All right.
Yeah.
Let us jump into not the sound, sorry. Let's jump to the look. What did you think?
Good. I mean, it if you want to, again, when we watched the Small Axe movies, they sort of did that they did their period piece in such a low key way that I think that sort of set the bar for me. I mean, there were some obvious choices when we first meet William O'Neill. He's in that he's almost dressed like Jim Carrey in The Mask when he goes to the club or something. Like he's got the goofy hat on, and he's got the oversized
fedora
overcoat, which was a look. I mean, I remember not zoot suits, those were way before, but it was a sort of a look. Malcolm X talks about that in his autobiography, but that's sort of 15 years
and at the beginning
before.
of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
like
yeah.
And
that's right too.
Yeah. This beginning kind of remind you of that? I felt it was almost like a little not an homage, but because he had a bit of a strut, but he was obviously a little bit of a hustler. The ridiculous hat, which of course he was trying to disguise himself because he looked young.
Yep. He didn't pass as old enough for an agent, let alone I don't know if they had any African American FBI agents back then, but once they sort of clocked a look at him, they said, "Wait a minute, this doesn't pass the smell test," But confidence makes up for a lot. But yeah. So in terms of the look, they had a lot of the clothes, a lot of the all those sort of trappings. I thought it was well done and sort of not overly in your face. I actually kind of like that period. I've got a sweater of my grandfather's that looked like something like what the Fred Hampton character was. Where it's falling apart, of course, but what he was wearing at some point in the movie. And there was kind of a neat, it's that bowling shirt, not quite bowling shirt, but sort of that era, and so in terms of the wardrobe, I like that they again, almost like the Small Axe movies. The events took place in big cities, but it didn't dwell a lot on the sort of the downtown core. Like it was more in the neighborhoods and things like that. And the neighborhood, like the buildings were kind of falling apart, and it had a real sort of good, if that's Jim, the right.
You may
the locations.
Repeat that. You froze a little there.
Oh, okay. The look of the locations and the settings had a real. I understand a lot of it was filmed in Ohio, and it had a real sort of a worn look to it. A lot of these places had seen better times. Yeah, exactly. But in terms of I'd like to hear your thoughts on things like color palette and all that other kind of stuff. I thought it looked good. I thought it looked maybe it was kind of muted a bit. I'd have to rethink that one, but it was a good look, I think.
I thought it was perfect. No, better than fine. It did remind me of the Small Axe movies in that you knew you were in working poor neighborhoods, but not, and there is the, I'm going to refer to a Chappelle bit where he's driving through the hood and sees a baby leaning on a street lamp at 2:00 in the morning, giving him a look. It's not that kind of caricature of poverty. the characters, the bit of the mix of styles, the, kind of, let's say, costume shout outs to some of what was going on, even as Fred Hampton's characters kind of, hey, that dashiki is not, freedom will not come out of the sleeve of a dashiki, which apparently was the other part of that quote, and I never heard that part.
No.
Freedom coming out of it didn't, and we've talked about this before. It didn't feel caricatured or overly stylized. It really didn't feel overly stylized. I think they did go for warmer tones. Like, there's a coolness in almost all the shots in the Small Axe movies you and I have looked at, whereas here they're going for they seem to go for a lot more warmer tones throughout. Not every shot, not every scene, but at least kind of a warmer vibe. I did, it gets cooler, especially when he's around the cop, even though they're in an obvious steakhouse. It could have been Ray and Jerry's, like that kind of overly red leather and wood and those tinted tumblers that add a color to them. Remember, there was such a 70s and really, I think, 60s thing. I thought it all worked. Was it? Well, I think you and I remember you might have said something about this, about last movie. I don't think we were talking about the look. Maybe it was the sound. But I think this might be a perfect example of, great cinematography not making itself known.
Yeah.
Especially because some of these scenes, even what do we get? One shootout?
Mm-hmm.
One big blast 'em up. And even that felt, because it's all of a sudden a shocking amount of violence near the end, and you're feeling it, and especially in the dark, which I thought was a kind of a gutsy move. That's usually one of the times the cinematographer can really show themselves off, and to keep it in the perspective of the people being shot at. Like, I thought that was pretty solid. That was an interesting call, and served the film, which I think is a good thing. Does that make sense to you? Or
no, I do. I mean, there was and thinking about it a little more, I sort of appreciated the composition of a lot of the shots, which isn't to say that it wasn't, not in the show-offy sense, but especially I like. There's a set of shots in the hall when they were having that meeting that the Jesse Plemons, FBI agent, shows up to towards the end, just to put a little bit of heat on William O'Neill. That, we're watching you. We need more from you. You got to get creative on this. They're really leaning on him. And so there's a few shots where it's just, it's like, I don't know how to do this with the screen, but
crowd.
Through the crowd. Like it's like, 3/4 of the screen is heads and stuff in the foreground. And you see like Lakeith Stanfield, William O'Neill in the background. And they did the same thing for Jesse. You just saw him in between people. He's got a little knit cap on to sort of fit in, and that whole sequence was kind of a neat. They're watching each other a little bit through the crowd. I thought that was sort of well done, and that was an example, I think, of some of the better composition choices that they made. And it sort of and they did something interesting at the oil refinery shootout too, didn't they? Didn't they do a couple point of view shots, or yeah, especially towards the end. So,
which was kind of a rare thing. You're absolutely right. There is, and I was even wondering where there was a point of view shot earlier in the movie. So you got the refinery shoot 'em up. We always knew which character was which, but I'm trying to remember. There was another one where I think the police had raided them or something. Both both O'Neill and Hampton are in the same room, and somebody's pointing a gun at them. I'm trying to remember. Was it police, or maybe it was when they. Oh, it was
Crowns.
No, when they're in the Crown's bar, when they're kind of making their presence known, and the Crown guy is holding the gun on him, and there I was like, okay, whose point of view are we seeing? Are we seeing Hampton's or are we seeing O'Neill's? Because already there is where both O'Neill, like one of the times he kind of establishes himself as he is not just a coward. You know, that conflict which makes his character so interesting. We see it in the way he's keeping an eye on things, and then he gets in the middle of it. But at the same time, he's also like, oh, there's people here who know me differently. And he doesn't want to be seen, which makes that all the more interesting. And I thought it made that end of the scene, or that end of that location until they get outside, scene's over, like that much more tension filled, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, wait a second. You're that fake cop.
Yeah. No, it was, so... Yeah, that was the same bar, wasn't it? That was the same bar that he sort of,
Which is why he was so
the Crown's
gets to the side, and he's furtive.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
But it allows him to see what's going on, and he does step up.
Yes, yeah. The pool cue, and then of course they bust his balls for it, as you do, and everyone has a good laugh. And but what are they saying? It's like, who brings a pool cue to a gunfight? Yeah, this Wild Bill does. Like that's where he kind of makes his bones with these guys or something. Like it does. He solidifies his position, and I think that's like, it was a genuine character moment that we get to see, and that was a nice. Also, Jim, that scene, that was a really nice bit of blocking, like the way. You kind of knew where everyone still was. That's a scene where you could get really confused really quickly as to who's who, where is everyone, what's actually going on. And in the end, even though you might have a little bit of that confusion on the edge, you're linked to two people, and you always know where they are, and it all makes sense at the end, and you don't feel lost in the location. Yeah, no. So that was, and that translation of action that we've talked about it with other movies, that being able to, because it's not just a straightforward thing, right? You have to obviously choreograph it. So it was it was well done. Solid look. I'm repeating I think what we both said, but it's nice to see a period movie that isn't making the period the star. Yes, yeah. You know, unlike the SNL's great bit about lesbian period movie. Last night, not a cheap joke on. That's an SNL cheap joke on a certain kind of film that has been coming out of late. Yeah. Anyway, you can find it on the SNL Instagram account, because there's some issues coming up to Canada. But yeah, it's super hilarious. Carey Mulligan and Heidi, what's her name now? And Kate McKinnon. Just a great skit. I thought it was chef's kiss. Yeah, I thought you'd like that. That's why I said it. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep moving, man. We're making great progress. Mm-hmm. Threatened to do this the way we originally planned. Okay. This is not to say always love the chat. Chat's the best. We have the best chat on the internet. But, oh my goodness. I'm so glad I checked. Jelly Duck. Woo. Hello, sir. Good to see you, man. All right. Deputy Chair. Comrade Cheboyko. Comrade Jim. Performances. Take it, brother. Yeah, comrade. Not to distill everything down into Academy nominations or what have you, but I it's not that I question it, but both these guys, Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya, they're both up for Best Supporting Actor, and I sort of wonder. I guess they're in it the same amount. Maybe because the Fred Hampton character went to prison for a little bit. There's a section in the middle where he wasn't present, but so you can argue that this is maybe William O'Neill's movie as the lead performance. I'm sort of not sure what the thinking is there, but anyway, they both had really different things to do. Lakeith was that weasel, and Daniel Kaluuya had to be that sort of that I hate the word iconic, but he had to be that charismatic guy, and that's not easy. And I was mesmerized when he was on the screen. I thought he was super watchable when he was all in that sort of same way that watching Denzel play Malcolm X, in almost in that same way, just that they're just in it and they're on it, and it's almost like a trance, and they're just going off, like doing a solo, and it was good. And I sort of love the fact that the woman who becomes his wife, and I'll check up the name in a second, she says, yeah,
Olivia Johnson, I believe, played by.
Yes.
Oh, continue. Keep going.
Yeah, that was good. Could have been better. I'm a poet. And it went on.
Are you a poet?
Yeah. So that was good. I could have used more of her, actually. I thought she was very good with the time she was allotted. And she
played
wasn't
by Deborah Johnson, played by Dominique Fishback.
Yes, and hers wasn't the typical, woman starring alongside Tom Cruise kind of thing, where all it is like, you're so great. Like, it was actually, she was a bit of a foil for him, especially at the start, and they had a real sweet kind of little bit of a romance.
And had kind of nice little moments at the end too.
Yeah. And Jesse Plemons does his he's sort of like Matt Damon's younger brother kind of thing, but his too is a name that's sort of been coming up more and more lately. But and he's been given a lot of decent roles. He was had a part in Fargo a few years back, but he was good at what he was supposed to do. The puzzler for me, I kind of like this about the movie. I don't think there was any timestamps, if I can recall. There was nobody said this is J. Edgar Hoover when like it didn't just say J. Edgar Hoover on the bottom of the screen. You knew who he was, the head of the FBI. But I found that a bit stunty. In a way, I wrote down here that this would have been a typical guy that Martin Sheen would have hated. Activist Martin Sheen. Notorious sort of lefty or Democrat Martin Sheen would have hated Hoover, and so this is sort of he gets to sort of make fun of him a bit, or just portray him as gross as the man was in real life. It sort of reminded me. I wrote down here the Jewish actors playing Nazis. A lot of the Jewish actors that escaped Nazi Germany eventually played German soldiers. So Werner Kempler on Hogan's Heroes, for instance, was Jewish, and so he gets to make fun of a little bit of vengeance there. But anyway, character, and so it was kind of an odd choice. I was actually going to ask you what you thought of it, but those are sort of the main roles. I liked a lot of the other supporting characters. I liked the lead of the Crowns, the head of the Crowns group, was that sort of like, yeah, you're cool now. That positive affirmation as the movie goes on. He was kind of a neat actor, but he pulled out some things. And I mean, what did you think of the Martin Sheen?
Well, all the performances are fine. I think, and maybe this is the perfect time to almost like pivot into story, because Jim, I agree 100% with you. No one was weak here, and the only bummer, like you said, who do you pick between Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield? and part of that is, and you know what? Now I'm going to circle back to what I was saying, in my first thoughts, and I think this is a perfectly serviceable story, beginning, middle, and end, kind of a tragic down note, which I'm really starting to get tired of. It's a total bummer of a flick in a way, and especially as what's come out in the news of late, and it's a bit more into the meaning thing, but I think this film could have been better served just picking somebody to talk to, just saying, hey, you know what, it is really going to be about Billy O'Neill. And, whereas Daniel Kaluuya, who totally delivered, well, give him a little less. His time on screen could be that much more intense. Keep it to some of the rah-rah speechifying and that, and make it really about Billy O'Neill and how he's, just gets, how this gets more and more of a struggle for him, or even he dies, and all of a sudden you kind of go, okay, there's our lead, there's our supporting actor, but it's like they didn't want to, they wanted their cake, and they wanted to eat their cake and have their cake. Mm-hmm. So got to pick one, buddy. And then because already you've got let's say the camera paying attention to both these folks. It's getting into both their sort of lives. Like, actually, we barely see Billy O'Neill outside being the undercover guy, except when he's being cultivated by the cop. And then you've got, and this is, I think, the one tough one. Yeah, Martin Sheen did a great job, but that is one part of the story that felt kind of forced on us. Like they felt like they had to. It's like, look, we got to make sure everyone really understands what a bastard J. Edgar Hoover was, and that this pressure was coming down from the top. I think there are way more effective ways of doing that. So I guess, this is what I'm saying. If you want to make it about Billy O'Neill, and I'm not necessarily saying that's the right guy to make this about. Mm-hmm. But if you want to, less Daniel Kaluuya, maybe J. Edgar Hoover gets one scene. Yeah. And all of a sudden you got more room for Jesse Plemons in that relationship. Mm. You've got more room for Lakeith Stanfield to really explore that guy, that role, that tortured man, because he's both a weird kind of mix of the man was capable of heroism, but was still a fink who killed himself and although his wife, I guess to this day, says it was just an accident, does seem
the timing.
So there's a fascinating story. Or again, less Bill O'Neill and more Hampton, and still only one scene for. Yeah, I think the emphasis is wrong, and it really kind of makes for a movie that's, how you're stuck with two folks who could have potentially been great leads, but are competing for supporting roles. How do you not have a lead in this movie? That's just not true. And, so it gets into that weird kind of dynamic.
Yeah. I know. I just looked up now, and probably being a product of its time, you didn't want it to be more than a certain length. I just looked now, Malcolm X, the movie with Denzel Washington, 3 hours and 22 minutes. And so and
it was still about Malcolm.
Yeah. Yes.
You met other people, but it was about Malcolm X.
Yeah. But I mean, with this one, you could have arguably added another hour and sort of did more with that. But I don't know if that would have helped it or weighed it down, or as it was, I felt it was fairly, again, I'll use the phrase light on its feet, but it was fairly,
Yeah.
from going along to where it needed to go. I didn't feel at any point it was sort of, checking boxes. I thought it told the parts that it needed to tell. But yeah, some focus would have been nice. I think the more intriguing character may have been William O'Neill, just from a storytelling standpoint, because he was so conflicted. And there's a point where he's backing out of another jam, and he's looking all worried, and then he does a sort of a shoulder check, and he kind of goes, he sort of laughs to himself. It might have been the shootout, and I just thought, oh, what a dick. And even then, he was like, "I'm going to the roof," not going to the roof, and then somebody's on the stairway. Gotta go to the roof. Stupid roof, and and
and
get
then he's
shot
the
at.
one who actually starts the shootout.
Yeah. So
well, and this is again, then dig into it. Like I think we're left, perfectly. It is a light on its feet film, but I wonder, Jim, 5 years, are we really going to remember it for anything? Are we going to go, wow, what a great character study of a traitor? No, I don't think we're going to do that. Wow, what an awesome take. Like you could come out of this movie going, wow, like myself, I can't wait to see the movie about Hampton.
Yeah.
Period. How he became who he was before he got shot. Because we kind of see him already full leader mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we don't actually see him, in a way, develop as a leader. His soon to be, the mother of his son, who, she gave birth like 4 weeks after the police murdered him. And yet another disturbing, we were defending ourselves until the physical evidence comes out and the memos. And it's like, and then it's like, well, listen, don't let your eyes or our signed confession steer you.
Yeah. Your lion eyes were...
Yeah. Are you going to believe me or your lion eyes?
And there's a couple of other things too, just about the police actually setting the building on fire, like having gasoline and just they're capable of that kind of thing, which all
that COINTELPRO stuff.
Yeah. And just across the pond, just across the Pacific, they're burning down the villages to save them in Vietnam. Right about the same time, and so they're picking up those tactics. I had even written that down. I thought, ugh, that's not in the job description.
Yeah. Well, even Billy O'Neill showing I don't know if that actual anecdote is that scene is an actual anecdote from. Somebody saying, and then there's that time Billy showed up with all the C4. That said, that has been clearly, proven true that the FBI, NYPD, like the FBI and these bigger city police departments working together were forever trying to get whatever they identified the radical, and then they worked their ass off to turn them into radicals by trying to get them to here. You should light this match on this fuse to this bomb that we built for you. Like that constant, when Jesse Plemons says the great line, what do you need from Uncle? How can Uncle Sam help you? Help them, help us, or whatever. That's
yeah.
And so like I think I can't call it a hot take, but I think what we had was a perfectly fine story driven by great performances, but I am left, I don't think this is not the definitive version of the Hampton story by any stretch of the imagination, of the very first Rainbow Coalition and how it was destroyed by the FBI and the Chicago Police Department, nor was it the definitive examination of a tragic traitor. You know, somebody who shows at times that they could have been so much more than, you know, an FBI stoolie and maybe a co-conspirator in Hampton's death.
Well, drug, you know, and it's funny too, because every step of the way they say, oh, can you do this? Oh, can you do this? Oh, I don't know, man. I didn't sign up for that. But he eventually does it. You know, he you know, draws out the floor plan of his apartment. Like, what do you think they're going to do with that? Oh, by the way, just drug his drink a little bit.
Which is what they found in, like, in the, and this is crazy conspiracy theories. It's like, no, it all comes out. There's memos, maps. It came out in the inquest afterwards. Oh, look, how did you get this? Well, what's that? The drawing of his apartment.
Jeez.
You know?
Yeah.
100 police shots, one shot by a Black Panther from the rifle he was holding dropped because the police just shot him.
Yeah.
You know?
But there were some good lines in it. You know, and you can say that also the story still is, you know, it obviously fairly relevant. I think Jesse Plemons at one point when he's saying that, you know, we'd like everyone to be equal. He said, you can't cheat your way to equality, which sort of reminds me of what's going on in Georgia right about now, you know, almost word for word. And then another one is, when he's asking, when Roy Mitchell, the FBI agent played by Jesse Plemons, says to William O'Neill, he says, why did you show a badge instead of a gun when you were trying to take the car? And William O'Neill says, a badge is scarier than a gun.
Yeah.
He says, with a, you know, behind it, or with a badge,
you have the whole army.
You got the whole army behind you. And I thought those are fairly, you know, hard truths, you know, that are still going on.
Not even they that hard. It's kind of obvious.
You know, obvious truths. Yeah.
What's so difficult about them? Being a little facetious there.
No.
But I wanted to talk about that Mitchell character. Here's one part of the story. One of the worst scenes, I think, in the movie. Did not ring true. Gratuitous. And also, I just didn't like it. Remember, Plemons is with the other guy where the other sleazebag who's going, oh, no,
agent?
That's been our secret agent. Yeah, sure. Maybe he did murder another Black Panther to cover himself. And now he's our guy to do all our shitty things that we've been doing across the country. But they call, or they're in a meeting with Hoover, and Hoover's talking about his daughter, and this whole uncomfortable, gross conversation about his daughter, you know, and the whole racist, you know, better not bring any black man home thing, you know, just so gross. And you've got this Mitchell character being uncomfortable with it, and he's trying to weasel out of the, you know, and that was the point where I was like, yeah, bullshit. I'm sure he would have said what he needed. I'm sure he would have said something racist, like this need to make the cops somewhat sympathetic, as though he's struggling with this a bit. Yeah. This is one part of the narrative that never came out. No one ever stumbled across the FBI. It's not like the FBI, when they were actually actively pushing back on the interrogation, like the torturing of Muslim, the extraordinarily indicted Muslims that they picked up all over the world. Like, this was not that FBI. This was the FBI who's like actively, he never would have been in that role if he wasn't as committed to keeping black people in their place as all that organization top to bottom was. These were not enlightened people. They were Hoover's G-men.
Yeah.
He recruited them, and that story, that component of the story, I just didn't buy it. And it was kind of icky. And it's like, we didn't need the scene to think that the FBI were the bastards here. We had enough to think, oh no, the FBI are bastards.
Yeah.
Why throw in that icky, and especially and it gets so gross, it's like kind of, well, this is distasteful, what if your daughter brings home a black boy? It's like,
I think
and he's almost licking his lips, sheen in his, it's like, what the, maybe Plemons was uncomfortable because he's like, oh, this is not going to work out well on screen. That may be what we weren't seeing his discomfort in character. We were seeing the man actually kind of,
it's almost
really
like this.
Do the scene.
The scene equivalent of a composite character or something. You have to sort of distill all this into one. I sort of think that what they were trying to do is also make him seem omnipotent, like he was the all-knowing, all-seeing owl man from the old Hercules cartoons. Hoover, because he knew kids' ages and things like that.
But what story purpose did that serve?
This is who you're up against.
That scene. What story purpose did it serve? Like, by then we're well into the second act, maybe already hooking into the third.
Yeah.
We're like, did we need to? Did you need to have that scene? Like the story actually kind of, stutters there for a bit. And it's like, I mean, did the Mitchell character need that motivation? Did they think it's, I was like, I
sort of, was he in jail at that point? I wonder if it was sort of a treading water scene, because Hampton might have been in, I'll have to look at it again, but just to make up the time
other
when
ways
he was
you can
in
tread water.
Yeah.
Just showing, kind of
bad.
creepy perv Uncle Edgar and the uncomfortable FBI agent, like he's suddenly, getting a conscience. It's like, no, these guys thought they were fighting on the side of good. It's the same, like in Aaron Sorkin's The Trial of Chicago 7, when they were presenting the prosecutors having some qualms and some commitment to justice. When you read them in interviews decades later going, no, we had him dead to rights. The judge was too much, but we were committed to our goal of throwing them all in jail. Like,
Yeah.
These are all racist bastards.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't need to,
The other
and so thing, I think that was but that's a small. Oh, go ahead, Jim. The other thing.
I was just going to say, sort of, not so much about the antagonists in this, but more about the protagonists. I wrote down the line, "Can you do even more?" And this was when Fred Hampton, I believe, was talking to the gang members and that sort of thing. And that was
the Crown.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the leader of the Crown's a almost direct tie-in. What Malcolm X in One Night in Miami was saying to some of the other guys that he had gathered in the hotel room there. So that's sort of an interesting thing as well. A little bit of an echo from movies that we watched recently.
I think, though, well, it certainly wasn't intended. I'm wondering, though, it's actually, when I compare the two, I think One Night in Miami becomes weaker, in part because the Malcolm X character is presented somewhat weakly in that movie.
Yeah.
Rightly or wrongly. I'm not presenting that as a...
Well, he was a little bit desperate, I think, at that point. Like a lot of,
well, that was the way it's presented to us.
Yeah, and a lot of the things.
In a bind.
Yeah, and it was coming. All the problems that he had been dealing with, all just sort of, he lost his connection to Elijah Muhammad and everything else, and so, or not lost it, but openly advocated for it.
It was
to
tense
be cut
and about to snap.
Yeah,
and then he was about to be murdered.
Yes, yeah. So not a good. Reminds me of that line in Scrooge. What a week I'm having, and Bill Murray. But not a great time for him.
Well, but otherwise, like I said, Jim, to wrap up my take on the story here, I do think it would have been better. Like, I mean, you know what? I'm not even going to say it was better served. I think the one scene that could have been ditched is the creepy conversation about Mitchell's daughter. I am left wondering. I'm left wondering what could have been if it spent more time with Billy O'Neill. How much more of a study of. How a traitor because we never actually see him rationalize his behavior to himself. There's no relationship he has where he says, "Oh, but I have to do it." He's not. We don't know enough about his background to know what led him to the point where he's hustling cars. Like we're just kind of much like Fred Hampton. It's we meet them here, they leave there. And we're just given not enough on either side to kind of get why, and so from a storytelling perspective, I think, more with Billy O'Neill, then we could have maybe seen that definitive examination of, what makes informant an informant, a political informant an informant. This isn't somebody infiltrating a drug gang. Or, hey, how does a Fred Hampton build a coalition, at a time, especially now? Wow, what an exciting film that would have been to see how Fred Hampton managed to build a cross-racial coalition, a socialist one, a communist one. It's just Marx. Like they had a class analysis that allowed them to reach beyond those racial boundaries and get real allies because of that. And how did he do it? How was this guy the first leader of a rainbow coalition in Chicago in the 60s? That would have been an exciting film. And so I'm always kind of left wanting that. Ditch the one where with creepy Hoover and the daughter. You didn't need that scene. If you're right, if they needed a pacing thing, well then, heck, there's just a million ways. It could have literally been just them getting yelled at over a speakerphone saying, "God damn it, get me them. Are you guys soft or some BS?" That could have done the job. And
exactly.
Probably would have felt better, Oh well. The meaning.
The meaning,
baby.
We should say hello to Curtis first there. Right in from
just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, we have Curtis Judd from, for everyone, actually, you know what? This is a great time. You know what, Jim? Good eye. And so glad you're here, Curtis. So let me take this off for a sec. For those of you who don't know, it is April 11th, of course. Just shy of a year ago, you and I did our first show.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
This is really our anniversary show. We have done, 52 of these things plus live specials. We've covered a ton of movies. We've had a lot of fun. We've learned a lot about live streaming. And with that in mind, with that in mind, I recently did an interview that will come out with Curtis about, lessons learned live. Of course, Jim and I are going to do a couple of videos just talking about, what we've learned out of a year of live streaming. So stay tuned for that. And Jim, happy anniversary, man.
Yeah, happy anniversary to you too. When things sort of when things get sort of settled down, we'll have to go for beers or something like that. But it's and then there's the whole COVID thing. The variants are increasing here, but we're almost qualified for our jabs, so that's
it's looking
we're slowly getting there. But,
starting to feel hopeful, man.
Exactly.
And we get a shout out from Richard L. Regarding our happy anniversary. Thank you, Richard. And, Katie,
thank you
for the congrats. But yes, stay tuned for that. It was a fascinating interview. Of course, like all these things with interesting people, Jim, it's like almost impossible to cut it off. It's like, and just as we think we've kind of covered a subject area, it's like, and you know what? But I think it will be well worth it. I'll probably have to break it up into components, but it'll be well worth people's, because Jim and I have a great take on live streaming from that first year, right? Like so much of our lessons are fresh.
Yeah.
Curtis has been doing this for several years now, and that kind of maturity and that later game sort of take on this stuff really kind of adds something. And so anyone who's thinking about live streaming or is already live streaming now, you want to subscribe. Let's get that graphic out. You want to subscribe. And what might you want to do, Jim? Ring that bell, because you want to stay tuned for that. All right. Okay, let's Curtis, congrats on a year. You've got a well-oiled production running here. Oh, Curtis, you came in a little later in the game. It was a bit of a stumble at the beginning.
This is our producer here, so that's who's doing the oiling there.
And thank you very much, Katie. Yes, we have come a long way, haven't we, Jim?
Yeah. I was convinced I actually had a critic's outfit in the first two or three shows that quickly got too hot. It was a turtleneck and a blazer and a hat, and I just thought I'll just keep using this, and then it got too hot in this. Yeah, but I just
in your attic.
Little bit of I was playing young George R.R. Martin, but it just got too hot up here as the spring progressed. So
All right. So Jim, let me ask you this. Now that we've congratulated ourselves enough, at least for now, let me ask you this, my friend. What did this movie mean? What do you think Shaka King was trying to tell us with this? What's the point of this movie?
Yeah, I've been sort of thinking about this over I watched it last night, and I've been sort of thinking about it since then. I have to think it's a movie about lost potential. I mean, Hampton was still young enough that his it wasn't a shtick for him at this point. He didn't have. Sometimes you see things about any public speaker anywhere, Martin Luther King or somebody, and they have certain things that they do that doesn't mean they're not sincere, but it just, you get a bit of a shtick going on. And he was still young enough that he was still, he was still open to things and open to meeting new people. And he didn't have his guard up, and, he had 21. Like, the guy was 21 when he died. So young. So I think there's a huge element of lost potential, because it just talks about, their headquarters literally gets firebombed. And I think in the sort of the readout at the end, the little scroll that tells you, where people are currently or what's been happening, it just says, it just sort of kind of died after that. It sort of wrapped up after, on a local level anyway. But, and then the O'Neill character, does himself in the day after his interview airs. So, just lost potential, I think. And who knows what could have happened to what would have happened with Hampton and his career. But I mean, yeah, the thing that they were scared of him when he was 19 and 20 and 21, and he was already sort of achieving things at that age. And I think, on the other side of potential, they were worried about that potential, the powers that be were. So, maybe it's all about, the two sides of potential there. Potential upsetting, being a disruptor, or sort of being a healer for the community. I think that's sort of, maybe that's me reading into it a little bit, but I think it's mostly about sort of like wither, like wither Fred Hampton.
I think that's a great take, which actually then makes me think back, Jim, again to what I was. My concern about that brings up even more my concern about the story, like my fundamental. And again, I don't want anyone thinking that this is, this film, I think this film sucks because I think the story kind of took one character on more than it should have, one too many characters or something. But yes, that theme could have been so much better explored, don't you think, if they had stuck with Billy O'Neill and his potential lost as someone who could have been really freed by something as radical as the Black Panther movement. Or again, Fred Hampton was like, geez, 21 when he was murdered, 21, and it achieved so much what could have been achieved. Now that said, or even, I mean, heck, you could even flip it around even further and kind of go, no, this is like, I mean, at the time, like that COINTELPRO project, I don't think people understand just how much effort the American federal government put into crushing, and it's not just J. Edgar Hoover, it really was the federal government in general going, yeah, black people should not get together. And definitely they shouldn't be organizing people outside their community. They all got to be put in their place. Like and how much effort was put into that, how much they used the still a rather high level of red baiting fear about communism and socialism and that, because these guys were, and I did like the fact that they were presented all as communists without them being caricatured. They weren't part of the Internationale. They were far more connected to African freedom movements and that political milieu than they ever were, with the Third International or the Comintern or anything. Like, I mean, but yeah, where was I going with that, Jim? Kind of lost my train of thought.
Communists and caricaturizations.
Yeah, they weren't caricatured.
I can't talk now.
As communists, but it does, like, just how much effort the FBI and other elements of the American federal government and state governments put into. It wasn't, if it was Martin Luther King or if it wasn't Malcolm X, there was always another black leader that they had to focus on, especially one who was very effective in the community.
Yeah.
And especially ones who were directly challenging not just the status quo. This wasn't just about buses or anything. They were challenging the right of the police to be in their neighborhood, picking on them, and picking on them, that makes it sound so petty. Like, just being in their neighborhood, shooting them, keeping them down, the man keeping them down,
Yeah.
And again, you could have a great filmed conversation about what could have been, why is the United States going through this horror story, you know, where we're seeing, like, I mean, they even have body cams on them and they're still like, you didn't do what you're told. The white, what's one of them from the other day? White wife assaulting jerk gets away because 2 police go, there's a black guy, do what you're told. It's like,
Yeah.
like, for fuck's sakes. Pardon my poor language, folks, but come on. You know, like, these guys are out of control. And that was also a result of the success of COINTELPRO. Even though it comes out later, the damage is already done. There's just, you know, you know what? And what was it? 10 years later, there's the Philadelphia Police Department bombing and burning down a neighborhood. You know, because of all the radical black people who thought who had the temerity to think that they could run their own neighborhoods.
Yeah. Even now, I sort of half expect somebody named Floyd B. Irving to join our stream and say, hello, fellow communists. The initials, of course. Yeah. In The Simpsons, it's Flowers. It's the Flowers by Irene band there. But
maybe it will be Irene, and she's a florist.
And then, you know, there's layers to this too. I mean, the other thing, I sort of flipped my pages of notes here, and you know, when Fred Hampton goes to visit the mum of one of the guys who was killed, one of his colleagues there, you know, she's talking about him. She says, "Oh, I wrote this one down. He's always 7 in my mind. Like I always think of him as 7 years old." But then they were talking about a connection with Emmett Till. I can't remember if that was the same scene. That his mom
later
babysat.
Scene, but his mom babysat.
Yeah. Babysat for Emmett Till. Of course, Chicago, a Chicago kid.
Yep.
And we all know what happened there. And you know, this is sort of like, it's generational. It's not just then, but it was before then, you know, and it's current. And, you know, it's guys shooting kids 15 times in the back before, you know, with that one, I think Body Cam came out, the more recent shooting a few years ago. And just, you know, maybe that's part of the meaning too, is that.
Well, and look at SNL did another bit last night. Their cold open was, you know, talking about the middle class white versus black perspective on what'll happen to shove it, you know, and the whole gag being like, oh, I didn't say that. You know, we all agree it's an injustice, but I didn't say that. You know, I thought it was great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a really well written skit, because it wasn't just they were on opposite sides. They were on the same side essentially, but talking about it in different ways. And so that's a pretty fine line to hoe there, I think. And you know, now let's talk about reparations. Whoa, you know, like
whoa. See, this is why you get in trouble.
And of course, one of the anchors' name was Jorgensen or something like that. It was in
Minnesota. Chuck. Chuck Jorgensen.
Yeah. But yeah, no, awesome. It was.
Says Rob Christensen.
There you go.
Living in a province north and west of.
Yeah, it's just a little bit down that way, but
not that far from here. You know, a movie we're going to do next month, hopefully, folks, is our a Winnipeg-based tragedy where the Winnipeg Police Service, which has a long history of, you know, well, that isn't the way it happened. Okay, maybe that's the way the evidence saying, okay, that's probably the way it happened, but hey, not next time. Until next time shows up. You know, I'm thinking of the J.J. Harper case, and that's, you know, within our lifetimes, you know.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe yet another one's happening right now. But, you know, what do you think? Was there any other themes you thought, you know, they were exploring in this film?
I'm just looking here. I
Like,
mean,
it
it was
definitely had a point of view. At no time did you ever think,
yeah,
you know,
this guy's bad for the community or anything like that.
well,
Like it
but
just
even that would have been a point of view. No, more like it had a very clear, distinct point of view. It's not a cheap shot, cheap shot. Oh, never mind. It's not like a Zack Snyder film where you're like, I don't know what the hell it meant. Hot take.
There we go. I have to say that with this one, I wrote down so many things to check later, and I didn't get to them all today. But I have, Jimmy Palmer, The Crowns, Manuel Ramos, Alex Rackley. I have a list of about 12 things to check out. The Crowns, it turns out, were a fictionalized. The Crowns were a fictionalized version of a.
But that gang. Jimmy Palmer.
Yeah,
like I stumbled across an actual picture of the kid. Children.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I have
younger than your kids for. Like.
Yeah. No, I have tons of things written down, so it's almost like, in a way, if people are watching this going forward, I think it does. It's funny. I watched a documentary on Canopy last month called 1 Million Dubliners. I think I watched it on St. Patrick's Day, but it's about is it called Glasnevin, their biggest cemetery, and just the various people that give tours and things like that. And one of the women is one of the people filmed always leaves Black Rose or something on the grave of Michael Collins, only because they made that movie with, which I still haven't seen, with Liam Neeson a bunch of years ago. So that was enough to increase the profile. This one movie that I'm not even sure that you can find it on streaming services. That was enough to sort of, signal boost his name, throughout the universe there. I'm sort of hoping that this will do this. So, maybe not so much meaning, but in terms of just education or, and it is a movie, it is probably slightly fictionalized, but just sort of signal boosting the name of Fred Hampton. Because I guarantee there's people out there that will watch it and they don't know that it's based on, real events, or they've never heard of Fred Hampton before. And so it's that kind of that there's, movies lend a significance to history, whether they're accurate or not. Like they sort of, like I said, signal boost it, and hopefully, people will sort of become more aware of things like this and what was going on in Chicago back then and that sort of thing. But
no, that's a great point, Jim. And yeah, that may have been because it was. And it was nice to see this film as it's not a hagiography of him either.
No.
But mind you, wasn't enough time to spend on him to be
That's a good point,
hagiographic.
Yeah.
But there was certainly, it is an act. It's a thematic act. It's a political act to present these radicals, these communists. They're communists in as realistic and as positive as a light as they did, without it being Warren Beatty Reds, where it's gauzy light, that kind of. It's not presenting it as idealistic either. It's really just showing how these people organized themselves and reached beyond their communities to try and make real change within their communities. And it's funny, actually, some of the tactics they were using are very similar to, like, do you remember Joe Zukin?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Joe Zukin was a long-time Winnipeg councillor, like a ward councillor, city councillor, who was part of the Marxist-Leninist Communist Party, local communist, a faction, a faction of the Communist Party here in Canada, in Winnipeg. And my understanding, one of the reasons they were so successful in North End Winnipeg, one of the reasons why Joe Zukin kept getting reelected, but that that party had survived and was very effective, was because they really took their direction from the community that they were in and of. And I think we saw that in here with them, their emphasis on feeding children, not as a charity on Thanksgiving, but no, we have a child feeding program, and that's what it is we're going to feed children. We have education programs. We're a party of community action and empowerment. And, it's an overused word. And that you could get that impression about this, I think, is actually a thematic, one of the thematic points that Shaka King is trying to make, is that it's like, hey, there is another way. Like they say it's even there's a backhanded criticism of Black entertainment television, or, you could say some of these, these Black entrepreneurs who are, well, you know what, we'll get ours, we can be part of the ruling class. And they're not saying that. They're not saying, we're not fighting capitalism with white capitalism, Black capitalism. We're fighting it with socialism. And I think giving that such a positive spin is one of the, I don't know if it's a theme or a message, that it's like that there's other ways of organizing one's a community for change. And I think that was one of the points of the film as well. Not as subtle as the one you're talking about, but I think they kind of inform each other, actually. Because you think about this other way, and you're automatically thinking, well, what could have been? 21. You see him speaking, like, in what footage you can find. It's like, heck, I'd want to follow that guy. I'd be one of those crowds. Like, I mean, that's one inspiring SOB. Like,
no, and he and the Jesse Plemons character, the one time that he does show up, he's not made to feel unwelcome. Like there was, or if he was, there wasn't any attention paid to it. So they obviously had sort of, their version of hipsters.
Students for a Democratic Society, which, all part of that 68. Well, the whole world was on fire to a degree at the time. Eh?
Yeah.
Like, this is like one local story.
But I think Paris, weren't they having riots in 68 at the time too? But
France was on fire. I think the Prague Spring happened, or was that part of 68? Like, I mean, because there was problems on the other side of the, of the Iron Curtain. At the same time too, if memory serves.
All kinds of fun.
Yeah, like it was a time of big change, and coming back to what you're talking about, big change, and perhaps the real story lost potential. Because I can't say, like, it was almost like, there's a big move forward, and then it's been reaction ever since. Especially in the United States. We didn't have as much of a push forward in Canada, so and the reaction to reaction has been a lot more, a lot more active and pressing. Hence the reason national health care came in the 70s in Canada. In the by the 90s, family leave was in fact the law of the land. So community action, collective action can work in areas even within a capitalist context. We're getting ideological here. Anyway, anything else we can really say on the meaning?
Meaning? Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot of ground there. I'm just looking at my notes. Just and how current it's, even though it's about events that took place all those years ago, how current it still is.
It feels really, they're the Liberals. Trudeau shot it down already. It's one of those things. Well, why are you even bothering voting on it? But, universal basic income. They were voting that on their at their election. Okay, or at their convention recently. Okay, Richard, we got a couple of comments, thematic comments in the political comments in the chat. Richard says, interesting point. Many political movements of all stripes have gained ground by providing much needed services that no one else is able to provide. And he continues, characterizes a range of political parties and movements from the U.S. Democrats in the 1920s, who welcomed immigrants, to communists in Canada, who did the same, to even the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Yeah, no, that ability to provide a social service that the state is unwilling or seems to be incapable of, is a great organizing principle. No, thanks very much for bringing that up, Richard. Okay, let's, you know what? Before we get into talking about Shaka King, the director, and Pass or Fail, and then, of course, wrapping it up with our own final thoughts, Jim, I think it's time to maybe hand over to you. And why don't you tell us about what we're looking at next week? Our last film before our Oscars watch party.
Well, it feels pretty good to get finally into some of these films, but we are looking at the heavily nominated and Golden Globe winning movie Nomadland, which is on Disney Plus if you have it. So no VOD charges. It's just straight on Disney Plus.
$25 hit.
Nope, and then you can, I don't know, watch The Mandalorian afterwards as a palate cleanser. But anyways, actually, The Mandalorian's a bit of a nomad. I mean, maybe you could sort of
just move right in there. Well,
cut him into
also
the film.
That new, I haven't even touched it yet. It doesn't draw my eye like WandaVision did, but there is also the new Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Oh yeah.
Take on, the MCU, that series. So, that's the kind of thing you're into,
Yeah, we've been watching it. We've got a young 20-something gentleman in the house who insists that we watch it, so we're all on the same, same boat. So they just played the 4th of 6 episodes on Friday, so it's pretty good. It's no WandaVision, but it's got its own little sort of momentum going, I guess. Bit of a slower burn. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good note. Do you see? Is this something we might want to look at on? Like, what I'm really asking: should I catch up on this? Is this something we might want to have a take on, or is it, or have we done our TV for a while?
Well, it's good. I'm sort of thinking of what Upside Down would say about that, but if I said anything against it, I might have anyway. But it's good. I don't think it's quite as interesting as WandaVision. That again seemed to have a little bit of a cultural resonance. They mentioned it. It was a joke on SNL last night. There's a few. You hear a lot more about it than you do Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but
which doesn't surprise me.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well then, Jim, why don't we let's quick check with the chat. No, we're good there. Let's head into the director. Are we giving Shaka King a pass or a fail?
Well, I would give him a pass. I think it was. Like I say, my favorite kind of things about a movie is if it's, if it doesn't feel like a chore, like they're going from point A to point B and you're like, oh, but this one was, again, fairly light on its feet. Yeah, there were some focus issues, I think. And I think I have to agree with you. I would have been more engaged had they stuck with one or the other. So in a way, you should maybe call this, Judas and or the Black Messiah as an alternate title. And it does contain both characters in the title. It's right there. But I don't know if it works as a sort of a dyad. It would have been nicer to sort of follow, one of the stories. Does that lie on the director or the, you know,
Ryan Coogler was one of the producers. You've
yeah.
got like it's a lot of, this thing was in development for a number of years. Like
Mm-hmm.
the writer, I think, Jim, let me grab his name again. Will Burson actually was somebody who was trying
Sounds
to
familiar.
had written this project and had been trying to pitch it for a while. There was other writers, like, I mean, it had been around for a while. Shaka King,
Yeah.
he independently was trying to pitch this project. So I think we could be seeing, don't know, but we could be seeing like almost like two visions negotiated into one.
Yeah, and that I've seen that happen in projects in the past too. I have to mention that this is his second. I mean, he's directed a lot of TV. This is his second full-length movie. He's done shorts as well, but second, and it felt pretty well handled for a second movie. The issues aside, it was still a good, it was still a really good movie. It was a great story. It was, I was engaged the entire time. I thought he got great performances out of his actors. And yeah, not a, it maybe should have focused on one or the other as we've been talking about, but I thought this is this guy's second movie, and the responsibility for that, to be the guy that finally does a movie on Fred Hampton, that absolutely stood up to the task. I can't imagine there was little pressure there. So I think I give him a good solid pass. And furthermore, I'd be quite interested to see what he's doing in the future there.
Yeah. You know what? I agree with you 100%. We've got to give him, I can't give him an A+, but a solid B+, maybe an A, definitely a solid pass. And you're right, Jim. Notwithstanding my concerns about focus, at no time did I feel like, wow, really kind of let down this significant historical figure.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas,
that's a good point.
When we think about how his portrayal in the trial of the Chicago 7, where he was portrayed as a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
He was presented as a dick, and whereas here, and that the Black Panthers were, borderline dangerous maniacs, and while at the same time kind of feeling punks, that sort of weird, kind of white view of these folks as dangerous, but they want to ridicule them. And, here, you can say, at no time are you going to say, boy, Shaka, you really let the memory of Daniel Hampton down. No way. Mm-hmm. And so, you're right. And nor did Daniel Kaluuya, delivered a great performance. And Lakeith, okay, now I'm going way outside. Director, to me, definite solid pass. Mm-hmm. All right, Jim. Let's give me some final thoughts, baby.
Final thoughts. I wrote down a couple things here that I didn't hit when we were just talking just now, but there's a great line about 2/3 of the way through the movie, probably in the second act, and they're referring to William O'Neill, Wild Bill, the Lakeith Stanfield character, and they say to him, or they say about him, I think it's the FBI agents, and they say, either this guy deserves an Academy Award or he really believes this stuff. And I thought that was kind of funny, especially because there's a ceremony in a couple weeks involving this young gentleman. But the other thing that I wanted to mention, I can't find it now. I should mention there was a neat thing at the end of the credits that said, a clenched fist to fallen comrades, and there's a little graphic at the very tail end. But
I missed that play.
Yeah, I'll see if I can screen cap.
Although
it
that
for
could
you.
be even Jim a. Oh, I might be being unfair here. credits are done late in the game. This movie
Yeah.
did just come out. It's like, whoa, because you're seeing that, as part
There's
of
a
the
little
Black
drawing.
Lives, that BLM.
Yeah.
We're seeing that a lot on social
Mm-hmm.
media, so that could very well be part of that. Although, again, no, you know what? That sounds like a cheap shot on the producers. This film earns that. Again, never once portraying these people in anything other than, a heroic way without them being overly romanticized.
Yeah. And, I think part of that, too, is their careers at this were so short. I mean, these guys, were, pretty
Babies.
young when they were disposed of. So
Yeah.
the other thing that I did want to mention, there was a really neat scene, one of my favorite scenes. I probably should have brought this up during the performances, where they make where a couple of the Hamptons people make Wild Bill hotwire a car because they didn't believe him. And I thought that was really good. And if you watch it again, Lakeith Stanfield, he's stammering through the whole thing. Like, it's almost like he's practicing reading the lines and doesn't quite, maybe for the first time, but he's repeating words. It's very naturalistic, but it's clear that the guy's like scared out of his wits.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who doesn't get.
And he's trying to double talk.
Yeah, and and hotwire a car at the same time. I thought that was a really great scene, and he did well with it too. So,
and it just oozes. It oozed. There's some great moments. Yeah, you're right. Where he oozes bullshitter. Where you're like,
yeah,
I don't know if I can get away with calling you on it, but you're full of shit, man.
Well, even when he first sort of starts coming to classes and stuff, he's chatting up the ladies and in a real obvious hustlery kind of way, and Hampton goes, not here. Go do 20 push-ups, and we treat our sisters differently. So,
Well, can't deliver a scene where two women talk to each other. They almost had one.
Yeah.
Just, almost had a, like, out of the mangrove, Small Axe mangrove, where they're actually, I know your situation. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm about to check yes on Bechdel test.
Yeah.
They're just going to talk about her baby. Nope.
Yeah.
I know you have all this stuff going on with the chairman. It's like, forget it.
Yeah.
Letitia Wright said, I don't want to talk about them. Let's talk about you and your baby. It's like,
the other,
so close.
The other thing when
you not that. Oh, sorry. Yep.
No, go ahead. Finish up. I just wanted to mention one thing before I forgot. Forgot.
Go for it.
I was going to say, when you're talking to Dan on Monday, tomorrow, right? Dan Simpson.
Oh, yes.
If you can ask him about, because he's watched this already. I saw your replay of another round there. Ask him how it feels as a Chicagoan to watch this. I know it was maybe not filmed in Chicago, but is there any kind of resonance? Is there any? Yeah. I'm like, I would say, our equivalent may be something 100 years back, like Louis Riel for Winnipeg. But, for him, for his city, Fred Hampton's obviously more recent history. Does that
68 in general?
Yeah, the house that they raided is still standing. They still
elected a Daley.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but
Rahm Emanuel, his career on the old sleazy ward healing system, and then dying on it.
Yeah. But the building where Hampton was executed or assassinated or whatever you want to call it, still there.
Murdered, assassinated,
Yeah. So, this is recent.
I will. And that's a touch base. For you folks, I do weekly, I'm on Dan Simpson's Twitch channel where I kind of give a condensed version, a spoiler version, free version of our take on the film. I try and capture Jim and I's conversation about it, and Dan and I chat about it with his chat. It's definitely from a more left perspective, it's called Left Flicks and Chill. So, I'll definitely bring that up with him tomorrow. For sure. All right.
interested.
Anything else you wanted to add to that, Jim? Before
I think that
before we
covers
move
it.
to the
No, I
wrap-up?
think my notes are all spoken for, and yeah, no, it's
All right.
looks good.
Well, folks, I want to say if you want to reach out to Jim outside of the show, beyond the chat, beyond the comments, you can reach it at jchleboyko. It's right there on the screen on Twitter. More than happy to engage with you there. Myself, of course, you can always find me either here or at Rob Christensen, all one word. Again, on the screen right now on Twitter, and love to hear from you, folks. I do want to gonna shamelessly take advantage of this one more time to promote. Here, bear with me. Promote our. our Oscar show.
Apparently,
go ahead, Jim.
Apparently, I'm winning something there. Body language.
Your body language is there. The mouth isn't necessarily. Of course, yes. In 2 weeks, April 25th, we will be having a live watch party. That's Jim and I, of course, and our fun friends Cody from the Brockup side and Sean from Lost in the Real will be joining us. Might have some other surprise guests. We are going to be running a prediction contest, whoever gets the most. We'll have a leaderboard. It'll be a lot of fun. But to play, you need to enter. In the description, very first line is a link to a Google form where you can pick your Oscar, your Oscar winners in every category. And the best part of the way that's set up, the way the Google form's set up, is you'll get an email with your bingo card, your filled out selections, and you can change your mind right up to an hour before the show starts. So keep that in mind. Start filling it out now. The more the merrier. There may be prizes. They may have a nominal cash value. Nominal. Don't count on that. All right, Jim, I think I'll maybe it's time to send you into the green room, eh? And
good night, folks.
Good night. Good night, Jim. And everyone else, again, thank you all so much for coming by. Really want to first of all thank Richard and Katie. And you know what the heck? One more happy birthday for Katie. From Hot Take Henry, happy birthday! Happy birthday, Katie. So glad you spent some of it with us schmoes here on Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies. What else? Curtis, thanks so much for coming by and for dropping in and saying hi. Hope you had a good time. Ahmed, you too. Thanks, man, for popping in. Always good to see you, Jelly Duck. And I think that's about it. Pretty slim, intimate crowd tonight, which is why we're actually getting away in under 2 hours. We're coming in 15 minutes under the actual movie length, which is unheard of for us. So part of our gift to you folks as part of our year anniversary. So with that in mind, I think it's time to, let's turn the music down and let's cue the outro.
I've been in your